I hope it will go better. It seems to work. I started as a painter, and I'm here showing you my first video. I had taught so many photography students actually that I became interested in the medium, and also there was a topic at the time that I wanted to deal with that had to do with film. So it was impossible to do it elsewise. And this was in 2001, and I had also started to take interest in matters of documentation. So photography became a natural thing. Also, I had inherited an archive of my father's, who was a media theoretician based in Berlin, and was teaching at the DFFB, the Film Academy of Berlin. So what you see here is, on the left, made within the context of that school. It's Inke Arns, who made a camera seminar giving 160mm roll to a Japanese student in the intention that everybody would do a camera move. And what he did was this relay race with a red flag through Berlin. And in the first film, the flag is hoisted on the balcony of Schöneberger Rathaus, which was the government of Berlin at that time, by Holger Mainz, who later was a part of the Rote Armee Fraktion. Was also a student at that school, film cutter maybe, but also filmmaker. So Balance have given this role to the students, and also the school had organized a permission to film the camera situation from the balcony. To film the traffic situation, the traffic situation of Berlin. Instead, they hoisted the school, and this became one of the parts of throwing all the students out later, because they were said to endanger the entire existence of the school. And my father resigned together with the students. The film is made in 1968 in January, which is 5 months before the student rebellions began. And in 2002, I had found this film of my father's and chose to remake it, because there was a return, one can say, of radical ideas among my students. I felt, having grown up in a generation where nothing moved in the Cold War, actually everything was foreclosed in a sense, I felt that radicality was coming back. There were riots in Genoa, in Gothenburg, etc. And there was also actually a war coming up that George Bush conducted. So my film is done briefly before actually big peace demonstrations, which were held in March 2002, I believe. The work was presented, Kaboom, it was in the Venice Biennale. I was super surprised because Francesco Bonanni and Daniel Birnbaum were doing a show that was called Delays and Revolutions. So my piece fit very well to their context. And this exhibition opened in June 2003. And in October the same year, Jeremy Deller presented a work which was called The Battle of Orgrave, which documents, it's a professionally made Channel 4 documentary, which reenacts the Battle of Orgrave, which was a symbolic period of the symbolic political moment when Margaret Thatcher managed to basically stop and make the unions smaller in importance for Britain. I forgot to mentioned here, my film ends with that there is actually no flag hoist in the balcony of Stockholm. And we made this with my student, as my father did as a participant, and we never got the flag up. And of course, interpretation of that is the big issue in this work, which now is a double. It's basically a ready-made, which I have borrowed from Jan Conrad, and a remake from 2002 with, I think it's 36 years in between. And what does this mean that we didn't manage? I mean, is then revolution over was the first interpretation, but then lately Albanian Swedish curator Eddie Mukar wrote that actually this non-act, that it didn't happen, opens also up for an imagination for the viewer to speculate. And that this speculation is also maybe a possibility. So this is a form of repetition, and repetition I have worked with before. This is a painting, and it's out of a series called Art Vandals, which was a loving remake, an academic remake, if you wish, of destroyed artworks. So it's artworks in the moment of iconoclasm repeated in the act of their vandalization. So this piece is, for example, you probably know one part of it, which is Guernica, Picasso's Guernica, which was actually a pretty rebellious painting at the moment, a political painting. And on top we see an act conducted by Tony Shafrazi, called himself an activist at that point, who went in 1974 into MoMA in New York and sprayed the words "Kill, Rise, All" onto Picasso's Guernica. Later he claimed that he wanted to save it from oblivion, that museums were responsible to make artworks historical and non-dangerous. And I took these acts of vandalism and repeated them lovingly, as in an academic tradition, we learn by copying. This is Kazimir Malevich, destroyed by Alexander Bremer, and my interpretation is a comment on that, trying to erase his vandal act. So I had been dealing with the notion of repetition before, but the flag made this work also biographic, because I had this archive of my father. So suddenly I started to work. I mean, this was pretty much also a personal shock for me to start working with a history I had tried to, in a sense, deny and forget. And I started to look into these issues which my father's involvement in 1968 meant, and how his participation in these ideas and how these ideas developed through history from then to now. I mean, they had ideas about sexuality. Wilhelm Reich wrote The Sexual Revolution. They had lots of ideas around early childhood education. They started kindergartens, for example, to a big extent, and there were feminist issues. There are many issues that kind of where they managed to affect society. Others where they didn't. So I started mapping these issues and looking at them, trying to find forms that could be political, or where the content and form kind of emphasize the red flag, that it was never intended to show like this. It was a video installation which was tiny. So the images were in size, only the size of a A4 paper. Anyhow, I started to do video installation. Quite a few. Here is a piece called two films exchanging soundtracks, which juxtaposes a film of Michael Marklich, which is a film about how utopia would get better if it would take care of the individual. So if the individual would be listened to, utopian society would go better. And then there's another film I juxtaposed it with, which is Cecilia Lindqvist's film, also from the same time. The first film is from 1967, the second one from 1972. And this film criticizes Swedish childhood education, looking and comparing it to Chinese. Now it's childhood education where sacrifice to the collective is the principle. And the film is presented in two sides of the room, like this, and this, the films, and juxtaposes the soundtrack. So you see the soundtrack from one film on the other. It's a pretty sad but also funny story.
Now, mit dem kann man nicht messen.
Sexuality, it's one of the first films showing live sex on the camera and in educational purposes. So it's trying to teach us how to deal with our sexuality. And in number 2 of these films, more of the language of love, they put it's actually a social minister and one of the leading sexual educators of Sweden. happened since then, I mean this is film 72, is that our notion of these children actually has changed. We look at the victimization of these healthy youngsters rather than looking at the educational purpose, which was done in a good, out of good intention. But I mean, if you look at the blind kids, they are actually pretty horrified by this. The sexual educator is pushing their hands towards these young Adam and Eve, and we, as from our time, are kind of looking at this in a very different way than they did then. So this is one of the works where I was investigating how the values have changed in time. This is from a seminar my father did, where he reconstructed historical paintings, actually. I don't remember the name of the painter now. Holbein the Elder, no? Or the Younger. Yes, it's a church altar. And what my father did was let Helmut lie on a table, and then as a pan he filled this. And what I did with this work was I took this video and re-edited it so that it becomes into body parts. So this is part of his pan, and they're presented each on one monitor, and then they look like Holbein's painting is very realistic. So you have this corpse feeling, and this is kind of strengthened by these. This brings back the original, or my father's film, to be more like the original, and somehow weaving with its junk. This is another work. Here on the little screen you see my father and a woman greasing paint onto each other and the canvas, joking about what painting is, and this is a social-political comment, I would say, to Otto Mühl, a Viennese activist painter who used women as his canvas. And my father's video, which was never intended to be shown officially, is kind of a feminist adaptation of this, trying to use both as a painter himself and the woman. Although, I mean, it's clear in the video that it's his idea and she does it out of affection for him, so it's pretty complicated. What I did was I used rubber gloves and printers to reconstruct this so you can see stills out of the video, including the video. This is another work where I tried to finish my father's feminist Edward Manet. It's basically making the students, also in these seminars, to redo a Manet painting, only that the men have gotten the female role and the women the opposite. And what I do is transfer this back into the medium of painting, giving it back also the woods from the Manet original.
Be cited in the expression of a town-bred man stranded in the midst of the desert. In silent film, we should have had to cut in a shot of the town. Now in sound film, we can carry town-associated sounds into the desert and edit them there in place of the natural desert sounds. Uses of this kind are already familiar to film directors in Western Europe, but it is not generally recognized that the principal elements in sound film are the asynchronous and not the synchronous. Moreover, the synchronous use of sound, in fact, only exceptionally corresponds to natural perception. This is not, as it may first appear, a theoretical figment, but a conclusion from observation. For example, in actual life, you, the listener, may suddenly hear a cry for help. You see only the window. You then look out and at first see nothing but the moving traffic. But you do not hear the sound natural to these cars and buses. Instead, you hear still only the cry that first startled you. At last, you find with your eyes the point from which the sound came. There is a crowd, and someone is lifting the injured man, who is now quiet. But now watching the man, you become aware of the din of traffic passing, and in the midst of its noise, there gradually grows the piercing signal of the ambulance. At this, your attention is caught by the clothes of the injured man. His suit is like that of your brother, who, you now recall, was due to visit you at 2 o'clock. In the tremendous tension that follows, the anxiety and uncertainty whether this possibly dying man may not indeed be your brother himself, all sound ceases, and there exists for you your perceptions of total silence. Can it be 2 o'clock? You look at the clock, and at the same time you hear its ticking. This is the first synchronized moment of an image and its cause sound since first you heard the cry. There are always two rhythms, the rhythmic course of the objective world and the tempo and rhythm with which man observes this world. The world is a whole rhythm, while man receives only partial impressions of this world through his eyes and ears, and to a lesser extent through his very skin. The tempo of his impressions varies with the rousing and calming of his emotions, while the rhythm of the objective world he perceives continues in unchanged tempo. The course of man's perceptions is like editing. The arrangement of these perceptions can make corresponding variations in speed with sound, just as with image. It is possible, therefore, to make sound film correspond both to the objective world and to man's perception of it. The image may retain the tempo of the world, while the sound strip follows the changing rhythm of the course of man's perceptions, or vice versa. This is a simple and obvious form for counterpoint of sound and image.
Strange film, no? This was also part of, please feel free to ask questions at any time about the past or being up here. This was a work commissioned for Venice, for the Biennale, and I was researching again early childhood education, and was looking at progressive periods in politics, actually 1968, around there, and also before the war, between the wars, between the First and Second World War. I found this film, in 1926 by a monastery near Stuttgart, where they actually take their children with deficit, with the what do you say, with the problem seriously. And they accept, okay, they're blind, how can we develop these other senses they have, smell, sense, and they do is to make these children develop within what they can do, with quite amazing results. I mean, when they run through the woods, it's I think, quite unique for people to have that trust which we can't see. And of course, it comes out of that they develop hearing, sensing, to the extent that they dare to run through the woods. What is macabre in the film is somehow that they do these examinations of graves, but having thought about it for quite some time, it's natural, because graves are one of the only things in the world, including monuments, where you have reliefs as texts. What they do is actually investigate the texts of the grave in order to read. So it's a kind of blind reading. And what I did was involve it in a larger show where I juxtaposed the film first with the text about perception and the film editing by Kudovkin, the Russian filmmaker, where he proposes that we should edit sound film. The text is written in 1928, as we perceive reality. And what he says is that we never use our senses simultaneously. We never experience the world the same through what we hear and what we see. It's only that we do this as a continuum after each other. This is an example in the text where he says, there was a siren and I realized my brother could be on the street because it's 2 o'clock, and he gives an example for how the siren makes him recall and then sees the scene afterward. And I involved in furthermore elements in this exhibition which were trying to foreclose our sensibility with text and paintings and several ideas. This is a series of paintings based on Karlsruhe, who was an architect, a Nazi architect, and the ideologist behind an alte Kunst, the Munich exhibition which articulated Hitler's aesthetics. And this is somehow also linked to the blind children who, of course, were endangered in examining their grave, were endangered in time. What Schulze Naumburg does in these series is that he juxtaposes basically modernism, this is modernist art, with images of sick children. For example, modernist painting, and here you have a patient sometimes, and here's the Modigliani.
Das ist Carlos der Vierte. Mag mal einen Lauf. Und Klapp. Klappe. Klappe. Ja, die 6. Klapp. Mach mal einen Lauf. Und sag mal, was ich sage. Mach mal einen Lauf. Mach mal einen Laut. Linksseitig. Mach mal einen Lauf. Lange halten. Laut. Mach mal
Thomas Giefer, Carlos Bustamante, and Gerd Conner, all students. And I made them redo the performance my father imposed on me. And this became the starting of some kind of exhibition. This is my latest show where I kind of, having done these, I figured that this is actually a Dadaist alphabet somehow. So I did this exhibition which was entirely based on alphabets. Let me see if I can find those papers. They're beautiful. Oh. This was accompanied by a series of paintings like these, which are based on the film, all of them. This is an American filmmaker, from the 50s, Songs Lemma. I recall his name not at the moment, it will come. And he made this structuralist film, Hollis Frampton is his name, which is very systematical, just it's film about film. He takes these snapshots from all over New York and organizes them in an alphabetical manner. What I did was taking the stills out from the film and then painting them, so making them into oil paintings on polyester. So every one of these paintings actually depicts, I think, 57 seconds from the film. Time-based painting.
Better organized the means of the individual and thus the possibilities of resistance, the more obliged are public affairs as a societal rule and for self-preservatory reasons to ingrate whatever the individual is, in order to prevent its neutralization of public affairs and thus to prevent accidents or catastrophes. The claim for totality must sustain the individual even if it does not reveal it, or, from its standpoint, is unable to reveal itself to it. The contents of the collective rest with the individuals, if it is not conscious of the tensions of the extreme as a correlation, it is simply padding without an engine. An emasculated patriarchal collective ego in the veiled twilight of an internalized, alienating animal. Its cultural effigies are the symbols of the death chambers of waiting in one-dimensional mass communication. It will strengthen the collective ego's power to anticipate itself in concrete utophias and in its images, and send packing the eternal animal's revelations, which seeks the end of the world with consternation, ascension, and panic. The better organized the means of the individual.
She's sweet, no? This is Gracie, she's from Bristol, and she is reading a text called Negative Dialectics, Schaltsysteme der Utopie, a connection scheme for Utopia, published in Neue Linke nach Adorno, the new left after Adorno, and written by my father. And I think the work is so, that she is so charming because, she's reading a text about her future, about our future, no? But she has a super difficulty in reading it and is super eager also to please somehow to do the task. But I'm she says beautiphobia, but the empathy in this, I think, lies on her side. For the viewer, I think.
Now I asked, what kind of directions did you give her?
Sorry?
What kind of directions did you give her? What did you tell her how she should read it? What did you?
I said, read as long as you wish, don't get tired, don't stress, and I only had to make it once. I mean, all these works, I always work like that, it's only once, it's one take, there's no repetition or I mean, rehearsal, or it's live. So it has this performative rules, you use the situation as it is. So I gave her as little instruction as possible. And it was arranged by the museum, and they were super they of course were pretty competent kids who had some acting skills. But I don't know why, but Gracie was the smallest, the other ones were much better. I mean, more skillful, but what I wanted was this unpreparedness, or difficulty. This was actually what we showed in Oslo. It was placed on a tilted screen. I just wanted to show you an image of what I work with now. This is Marius. Do you know Marius? Do you know the story about Marius? Marius is some know. Marius is a 2-year-old giraffe that was perfectly healthy until the zoo in Copenhagen decided to kill him because he was not useful for the genetic program they were running. This is pretty shocking, but what was even more shocking was that they made a didactic program out of it for children, because children need to learn how to handle death. So they actually killed him in front of children and then fed him to the lion. Isn't that some story? So I'm kind of working about how to handle this. I mean, what artists can invent is nothing against this. What you can read is amazing. What they say in the newspaper, so that's marvelous. I don't know how to deal with it.
Of the work. But working, the latter becomes actually what before he only was potentially. Labor power in action, a laborer. In order that his labor may reappear in a commodity, he must, before all things, expend it on something useful and something capable of satisfying a want of some sort. Hence, what the capitalist sets the laborer to produce is a particular use value, specific article. The fact that the production of use values or goods is carried on under the...
So we'll actually stop this now. This is my latest project, which also was shown in a nutshell. Let's turn over, we only have 10 minutes left, so maybe we could turn over to, I can run this afterwards a little bit, and we could turn to questions. I've tried to show you, painting where it kind of makes connection to media. And these basically video installations, they are where I see form as content. I mean, that's my concern. I think the form should explain how the work functions. This is a reading of Karl Marx. I read an article which was about a Swedish critic, actually Peter Cornell, who was kind of actually suggesting an artistic idea, which was again about children. It was about reading Karl Marx for children. I mean, Das Kapital is considered to be a very heavy text now. And once you look at it, if you reread it, you can actually find he suggests other meanings than the more actual financial in concerns about how the children would read it, like the fascination for bees and architects, or spiders and weavers, and what actually is going on. It's pretty surreal if you look at it from that point of view. So what I tried to do was to juxtapose it with a scene from this sublime mountain in Salzburg, and the tourists watching it, trying to see if the text brings up other more poetic dimensions.
I thought it was Cézanne's mountain.
No, it's not something wow. This is Unterberg. It's actually a site that is used for production. They take marble out of it. So it's in a sense relevant, but in context this is actually a surrealist collage, I would say, where it's two things that don't belong together are trying to give each other meaning.
When was it you made the paintings, the Hollis Frampton paintings? When did you make those?
Those were pretty recent, 2013, I think.
So when do you resort to painting, and when do you choose? When do you resort to painting, and when do you not? When do you stay with video?
How I choose, you mean? Oh, I dream about that I wouldn't be, that it wouldn't be dependent of media in any sense. I mean, as an artist, I started very like this skillful painter who didn't really know what to do until my own life kind of caught me. I mean, I come from this politically charged family. My mother she's a violinist and ran a political campaign for women in orchestras, and my father was in the middle of '68, part of something called the Adorno School. And I grew up in this void, which the Cold War was. I mean, it seemed like nothing was possible and everything had happened. And we were also told by the older generation, well, I did the last painting, what are you going to do? I mean, in that sense, things were really closed and stuck, and I didn't have a project to kind of adapt my paintings to. And at the moment when I kind of realized, well, this is where I come from, I mean, this color test film, it actually, in a sense, attacked me. It woke me up, and it came out of a tragedy. And the suicide of my father, and I mean, things I didn't want to acknowledge. And since then, it's pretty fun to work. And I mean, I'm looking into these topics, whatever, and then I try to find a language where the form can actually give something to the content, which sometimes it takes a lot of time and it's difficult, and also since it's autobiographical, it's sometimes sad to look into, So it takes quite some time to develop the medium, and ideally the medium is the message, I hope, so to speak. And by this I think I have somehow gained a voice. But if you ask about the medium, I mean, my hope would be actually to be able to do, like Bruce Nauman, to do everything in every medium. I mean, sometimes he makes a neon sculpture and then 5 years later you see a drawing of it. Or like Kelly also has this possibility to work all over the field, I admire artists like that, or Tippenberger, who, I mean, he tries to bring his provocation in any possible form, He's also a very good designer of books, for example. ideally, I would like to use all media. Although I find it, my videos in my videos, these juxtapositions are easier to do. Maybe I have found my methods better there. And it is a couple of methods. It's historical comparison, it's repetition. This repetition really became a dome. There were domes of exhibitions with me in Germany, they're all over, which were all called somehow. Read this, read that. It has been followed up by pretty many artists who there was a couple of exhibitions which were about historical reenactment, and then there's been followers of that. So that's an important method, I would say, or comparing or juxtaposing, but also remaking. Putting the same activity in another context totally changes the idea of it. When my students remake the performance of my father, it's a power game. I'm instructing them and say, good, and they're older than me, so it's this game of the instructor and the actor. And in the older video, I'm enclosed, although it's actually the same activity that is going on.
Have you ever done a live performance?
Gracie was a live thing, actually.
Yeah, but it was a video, and you could still, afterwards you could choose to use it or not, right? Even though it's shot live.
Yeah, no, Gracie in Bristol was my first performance, actually. Maybe that's because my father was so performative when I'm really there.
So there was an audience behind the camera?
No, actually what we did was let it be with the audience first, and then when the audience was gone, she continued. So actually we had to do it twice, because there was too much ambient sound in that case. Everything crystal clear?
You mentioned that the reason, or one of the reasons that you remade your father's video with the flag was that you saw a tendency amongst your students or young people that they became also politically more active, or they became activists in a way, or interested in politics. So that was, if I remember, 12 years ago. How do you see the situation now?
Well, wow, Fukuyama is so wrong, no? Francis Fukuyama wrote this essay called The End of History, claiming that the West won and history is over. And now we can't say that anymore, can we? We have to rewrite this book. It's sensational what's happening. All these historical moments, like the wall coming down and 9/11, then America building a new enemy, and now there's Cold War coming back again. I don't know what to say. What I'm happy about is the notion that we actually do know that it matters what happens. It's not over.
I think we all can agree, of course, that history is taking its turns, but how you mentioned especially that young people were interested in taking part in it. Do you see this with the same intensity among young artists, that they deal with these topics?
Well, this whole huge effect of this relational aesthetics movement that has now moved into some artists are trying to do art really useful, which I find interesting. Really hardcore making social projects and that you have all over the world, no? Kanya Pradera or Studela, or really trying to imply radical ideas again. And there was actually one theorician, Inke Arns, which I mentioned in the invitation for this, who really says in this, she did this show about reenactment in Berlin, she said in old utopias there is a possibility to find unrealized potential. So if we look backwards, we can find models for the future, which I find a really interesting idea for an artist to work with, which we could. Did I answer your question?
I think yes. Thank you.
Can we say that today is repetition of something from the past? So today is the political situation.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Can we say that today political situation is like a repetition of something from before?
Well, Marx said this, that history repeats, first time as a farce and then as a tragedy. I don't know. Do you think things repeat? It's different in different cases. Now, I mean, the wall coming down is something quite unique. Well, what's happening now is maybe a repetition. I don't know.
I don't really know how to put this into a question, but I think it's striking from the examples that you've showed us that whatever gaze you have on society or politics or history, it's very connected to your biography. Is that, can you say something about that? Is that the case throughout, or does it just happen to be the way that is that makes it most tangible for you?
That's a classic thing among artists. Now we use ourselves and what we know. And actually, since I started to realize that what I stand on is something to look at, and if you look closely into your own, into what you really know, you can find something that is very relevant to yourself and another depth that is relevant to anyone. I mean, it's always the judgment now in art that you should talk about your own. No? I think if you everybody has something to develop, which can be terribly lost if you, for example, talk about something else that you don't know. I mean, Oliver here last week said Bergman is only so great because he's talking his own language. He has to talk Swedish. That's where the death is. I mean, in some sense, I think we are all carrying something that is worth looking at. That's how. And I mean, just for the cause of not being lost. No? I mean, this is I can claim my father, no? I can't claim the world.
Could you elaborate on how you put the memory of your father? Why it inspires you so much?
Sorry?
Your engagement with your father and kind of taking a point of departure in many of his works. Could you elaborate on why this inspires you so much?
Well, I don't know if the right word is inspire, but no, it was a moment of I was very unconscious at the point when I started this work to work autobiographical. I mean, I didn't like autobiographical works to begin with. I thought one should do a deal like Matisse with the viewer and show something beautiful, and was avoiding my own biography. So I mean, it came about actually. I was invited to a show in Karlsruhe, this place called ZKM, and they wanted to do something about iconoclasm, actually it was. And in that context, I wanted to do a film which was about some kind of murder that happened in Perpignan, inspired by Dali. And I was trying to do this film about the murder, actually, and couldn't find the voice. And then I found a biography by Musa Maya, writing this. It's one of the first true autobiographical books about genius, which is honest. It's psychological. So she's talking about all his problems as well, from the point of the daughter, and also what she dislikes, etc. And that's where I started writing. And so I was trying to write in the perspective of the son of a murderer. And unconsciously I was getting close to dealing with my father, through this method. And I was totally unaware of that until I met this student of his. And Jan Conrad I met by coincidence at the film screen. And I asked him if he remembered my father, and this was pretty recently after his death, etc. And I went home and wrote my script again and realized you're dealing with your sorrow. So I mean that's where it started. It's not like a choice. It's rather, you know, Antake, for example, did very lyrical works to begin with, and then at some point he found out he couldn't be truthful not to let the world in. It was a matter of honesty to start doing truthful work. He couldn't hide it, so it's more like that for me. It's not like Richard Wagner who wants to expand into everything, make everything art. It's more a personal choice for myself. But it's not something I wanted, it's something that I inherited. At some point you were laughing, I was super sad.
You said that you don't want to expand, to invent the world, but at the same time you want to try out every medium. So,
I just like those kind of artists, yes, but I mean that doesn't I mean to be like Kippenberg, that doesn't mean you have to be like Wagner. I mean Wagner has this idea that art should be the model for the entire world, and the entire world should be art, making him the king of authors, no? That's very pretentious. But I do like those artists who can use any means or media. And I do like the kind of art which is carried by meaning somehow, not aesthetics in the first place. Of course it's about aesthetics also, but I hope to be able to do work in different ways. That's more fun. And also, you know, in a sense, to be a painter and you know everything this is also an important part of it, actually, to handle your ignorance. I think if you work with something you know well and you can handle, it's much more boring than if you follow your ignorance. If you work with tools that you can't really handle, you kind of get very self-aware and very attentive. I mean, a good example for this could be Bob Dylan at one point. He brought his studio musicians to the studio, and then he made them swap instruments. So the drummer would play the guitar, and the organist the drums, and the drummer the bass, and so on. So they were all these good musicians who were sitting there with instruments they couldn't handle. I mean, they had never trained these, no? But they were super attentive and alert to the situation in the room to try to solve this. I mean, you can't really handle the tool, but you have the sensibility from knowing your instrument, but you're lost with the using of the tools, and that interests me. I mean, that was what happened with me when I did film. I'm not a filmmaker. I mean, I had a couple of collaborators who could help me, a film company, but I didn't know film. So the interesting thing was to use tools I couldn't handle. So in that sense, I think not only knowledge is important, but also using your sensibility in using tools you don't know. And that can bring you further.